Beowulf is an epic Old English poem that has come to us through chance alone, sneaking its way through the ages like Grendel prowling the moors in a rolling fog. It gives us the themes of Tolkien and the Dungeons and Dragons tropes of monster slaying and treasure stealing. So picture yourself in a smoky Viking hall with a roaring fire throwing flickering light all around. Let these two skalds sing you a yarn while we sip mead and remember the good old days before the Christians stopped us from killing each other. It's time for episode 17 of Toasting the Classics, Beowulf.
All right.
Toasting the Classics. Toasting the Classics is back, and if it sounds funny, that's because it is funny. We're doing a Zoom session again.
It is funny. I like that. Yeah.
So
Dave felt that he had to go gallivant off into.
Yep, I'm in Virginia now.
I'm stuck in the desert, but I spent all day with the kids, so I'm just beat. Kids will do that to you. Kids
You're complaining, but aren't you going to Disney World like tomorrow?
Day after tomorrow, thank you.
Okay.
But,
all right, there we go.
but which just means that I could have used the rest. That's all that means. You're affirming my gripe session here.
There's a photo of me with Alex on my shoulders towards the end of our Disney World trip. And I look like somebody from the Tet Offensive, like after it's over. Like I'm just destroyed by 5 days of Disney World.
The thousand yard stare.
1,000-yard stare. Yes, exactly. So
I think it's stolen valor to say that, but I do get what you mean. But well, welcome back, Toasting the Classics. Clint Lanier, Dave
McArthur.
And today we are doing Dave's pick. This is a book. It's a poem, actually.
It is technically a poem.
But it is a book. And we're doing what, Dave?
This is Beowulf, going back into the deep roots of British history, like we did, even more so than with Macbeth. Although this would be historically right about the same time, I think.
As Macbeth?
This would be earlier. This would have been closer to the time when Beowulf was written. Would have been fairly close to Macbeth, the events of Macbeth. But the time that it takes place is more like 700 AD. Whereas
or earlier, I kept reading 6th century, which would be about 500.
It could be anywhere, yeah. It could be anywhere after because there's a couple of historical cues in the poem, actually. Like they mention the Franks and the Merovingian dynasty. So I think that's why people are like, it's no earlier than the 6th century because those things didn't exist. Although, I don't know, you know what? It was written later, so maybe it could just be a mistake.
Yeah. Well, all of that is conjecture. I mean, what we know is that it's about a 3,000 line poem. It's set. It is definitely set in about 6th century. It focuses on the Danes. It's a Viking Norse epic. Some people call it an epic. Tolkien called it something else. I can't remember. An elegy. Tolkien called it an elegy rather than an epic.
I can see that. It's interesting.
And it's influenced, like you said. I mean, it's influenced just a ton of things, all the way up to and including, the Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tolkien himself was a translator of Beowulf.
A translator and some would say like a popularizer, not popularizer, but like brought it back into current academic thought, basically. Beowulf was kind of lingering a little bit, and Tolkien did a really big translation and interpretation of it. Right. I don't know, in the 20s or 30s, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
But it's all. I mean, Lord of the Rings is just covered with Beowulf. It's all throughout. And I didn't realize his connection to it. So that's that. I mean, I'd learned about it while I was doing my background for this, but I didn't know about it before. It totally makes sense, though.
As you were reading it, you weren't getting that so and so, son of so and so. With the brave mantle of the manly warrior in the gold, whatever on his. And blah blah blah.
I read it 12th grade English class. And I definitely, even then I was like, oh, this is D&D. This is where D&D comes from. Yeah. I actually was not terribly familiar with Tolkien at that time. I read The Hobbit when I was a kid and didn't actually read the Lord of the Rings books until not long before the films came out. I was sort of like, you know what, it's about time I read these books. So I read them. I was about to say. I wasn't really familiar with them as much when I read Beowulf, but Dungeons and Dragons, the idea of going out and killing monsters and then taking their treasure. I was like, okay, that's what this is. This is the source of this. Yeah. I was like, either somebody read this and then created Dungeons and Dragons from it, or this is just deep in the DNA of Northern Europeans that killing monsters and taking their treasure would be a fun thing to do.
Well, and so that's also, what, I think D&D, a lot of the stories or tales or adventures start with there's a monster giving people problems, and you have to start
in a bar.
And you have to
always starts in a bar.
And you have to go kill the monster, and you know, and then you end up taking the treasure and stuff like that. So should we back up? Do you want to give a synopsis? We don't.
I was thinking that. Yeah, and actually, compared to some of the things we've talked about before, this is pretty easy to summarize. So it's an epic, heroic story told in a long poem. Takes place in like 3 main chapters, which is Beowulf fights Grendel, the monster that's terrorizing the Hall of Hrothgar and killing all of his men. Then has to go and fight Grendel's mother because Grendel's mother gets revenge on the same people. Then becomes king, grows up, gets old, is king for 50 years. So I was thinking about this. He must be in his 70s.
Right. I was thinking that too.
In the last part. Yeah. When a dragon terrorizes the kingdom of the Geats, he goes out and fights the dragon and meets his death fighting the dragon. Right. It's a pretty straightforward story.
That's it.
In fact, mostly it's the themes and the language and things like that. The story itself is pretty fun, especially I imagine if it was told the way that it once was, which is everybody sitting around the Mead Hall with one of these, bardic people. I think they're called scops in this particular culture, but like singing this song and performing it in front of everybody. This would be fun. This would be like watching the Lord of the Rings film. And I don't know, how long do you think it takes to read a 3,000 line poem?
So that's a good question. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I don't know what translation you had. So
that's a good question. We should talk about that. Which one is yours?
Oh gosh, that's a good question too. Hold on. Mine is.
Did you do Pert and Raffle?
No, this is Chauncey Brewster Tinker, PhD, from Yale College.
Did you have a reason for going with that one, or is that just what was available?
That was available.
Okay.
Okay. But I think I don't think you can do the Old English actual poem justice, and it wasn't a poem in like rhyming schema that we might think of, but it
they didn't rhyme.
Yeah. It had alliteration though, and it would almost be a sing-songy type of.
Do you understand? So I saw that, and I'm really very bare bones knowledge of poetry. So I saw the term alliteration used, and my first thought was like, are you telling me every line of this poem starts with the same letter? Because that's what alliteration means to me. Yeah. And I looked it up. It's not what it is. It's some other poetic device. Do you understand what the poetic device of alliteration is?
Not entirely. It's something about how there's 2 halves to the line. Like
there's a caesura.
Yeah.
There's a pause in the middle of the line. I got that. Right. So maybe those 2 both start with the same sound. That would make sense.
Maybe, or just breaks it up enough. But I think the point is that if you were saying, this is an oral story, right?
Right.
Before it was a written story, and so I was thinking.
Well, it took me maybe just over 2 hours or so to read it. Just reading it as a text. I think obviously if you're performing it, it would be slower. Right. You'd pause on certain things, and I know when I read a book to my kids, it takes me a lot longer than it does when I read it in my head.
Right.
But I think probably over the course of a long evening or 2 evenings, you could probably get through it if you're performing it.
Or maybe a few. I think set the scene here. The Norsemen or the Norse, these mead halls that it takes place in. It's called.
The one that he's in is Hrontor.
Frontas? Heorot.
Right.
So, but they have this mead hall, and it's a big gathering hall, and they have a big feast there, and the king is there, and all of the, And I think it's everybody there, not just the warriors, but I think it's more of a gathering community hall type of thing. But during the winter, we're talking about a place that was dark for months at a time, snowed in.
Yeah.
And what they would typically do is they would forage all summer, stock up for the winter, and just really do nothing all winter but feast. And so I can see
sounds like a good time.
Right? I can see on a cold night, big fire going. They have a big feast, and he calls out the what did you call him? A scop, and
scope, yeah,
a scope, and
I don't. I mean, I'm pronouncing that based on what I read
a
as
bard,
well.
a bard or something like that. Yeah.
A skald or a bard. Yeah.
And he comes out and he recites, a good hour's worth or something like that, and that would be kind of like the evening part of the evening festivities. And then the night they're going to do it again, and he'll recite.
Yeah, leave him on a cliffhanger, right? Wouldn't that be good? Like,
right.
I think that sounds good. I've got a really vivid. So I've always had a really vivid mental picture of what one of these mead halls would look like.
Yeah.
And so, so it's just an evocative image anyway. But I went on a trip to Italy one year with my wife, and we had a layover in Stockholm. And we decided, it was a long enough layover that we were like, we're going to go downtown Stockholm and walk around and see what Stockholm's like. And it was very quiet. There wasn't much going on, but there was a Viking bar.
Oh, cool.
And we were like, it looked like something from Disney World. So I was like, all right, this is super corny, but we're going to go in here anyway. So we went into this Viking bar that had like a big, it was made to look like an ancient mead hall out front. And we went in, and it was mostly a basement bar with this intricate winding rooms with like benches in the corners and like fires burning in different rooms and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, this is really neat to see as an American. I'm sure this is super corny, but we got a couple of drinks, and they had bards come out and start singing, and they started playing. And these Swedish kids were singing along with every word of these Viking songs, and some of them in costume and stuff, and they were not American and not tourists, or at least not tourists from other countries. I was blown away with how cool it ended up being, despite looking super corny outside. It was a really neat experience. Like, if anybody's ever in Stockholm, like downtown Stockholm, I highly recommend going to this Viking bar. It was a really cool experience. Like, very cool. And that's
what is it called?
That would be, I don't know, but you'd know it if you're walking around Gamla Stad, like downtown Stockholm. You'll see this Viking bar. It's very obvious. Like I said, looks like something from the Norway Pavilion at Epcot Center. It does not look. It looks like it would not be cool, but it totally was. I highly recommend it. And that's pretty much that's the region where Beowulf would be from. I think southern Sweden, pretty much. That's where Stockholm is. So
Denmark,
not too far from there.
Right? Yeah, Denmark, Sweden.
Well, he's Norway. He's from southern Sweden, and then he goes to Denmark, and I think that's where he fights. That's where all this fighting goes on, is in Denmark. He goes to help the Danes.
Yeah,
the Danes that he's. Or they just talk about the Danes as an enemy, and he's actually in another part of Sweden.
No, I think they are the Danes. I think that he's a Geat, and
he's a Geat. Yeah,
the Danes are their friends. Hrothgar is a Dane, I believe.
Okay. All right. So then
they call them Sildings. Sildings.
Yeah, Shieldings or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a family name, according to my book. In fact, that's a family, but I don't know what. Maybe I don't know exactly where they're from, but. Anyway, it's pretty similar to where he would be from, the place that I was in. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, before we move on, let's see. Should we break into a trusty drink? So what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a bottle of mead, of course. That is the drink of these ancient peoples. And I thought about doing beer, just because we haven't done a beer episode in a while, but that definitely. I mean, they're talking about mead all through this. This is probably the classic we've read that is the most obvious choice for what to do, because mead is not only drunk constantly in this story, but they're in a mead hall.
Yeah.
One of Grendel's epithets is wrecker of mead benches. Which is a really like random thing.
Well, it's more of a cultural thing, right? What kind of mead are you drinking so that the people can?
This is Carroll's, Carolls. It is a sweet honey wine, 8% alcohol by volume, and it is an Irish mead.
Irish mead, okay.
Because it, just like in Beowulf, mead was very big in ancient Ireland as well.
So I'm drinking I'm drinking a canned mead.
Canned mead. Okay.
Yeah, and this is a sparkling mead. I've never had a fizzy mead before.
Oh,
So
interesting.
Yours is probably much more realistic. This is had some CO2 pumped into it, but this is Chaucer's sparkling mead.
Oh, I almost got a bottle of Chaucer's.
Okay.
So glad I didn't.
Semi-dry, hard honey beverage with natural orange and ginger essences. Looking forward to this. Oh yeah. So they injected it with CO2. So it's the same thing. They just made it sparkly.
Right. Well, shouldn't change things. I did. That was quite impressive.
Now
I don't think that should change things too much, right? I mean, it's still essentially the same drink.
And I'm pouring it into my butterbeer.
Like a Harry Potter butterbeer. Yeah.
That's only what I could find. I looked. I could not find any like traditional mugs with handles. They're all like pint glasses. Cheers.
Cheers. I haven't actually poured mine. Does yours have any additives, or is yours just fermented honey?
Let's see.
Because from what I hear, there's all kinds of different things that can be put into mead.
So this has filtered water, 100% organic honey, tartaric acid, whatever that is, yeast, sulfites to preserve freshness, natural ginger essence, natural orange essence, and
CO2. So there's some additives
and CO2.
So you've got some floral additives, some fruit additives. Okay, so and then there's yeast. That's how you get the fermentation process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. God,
okay, really so honey, so mead, and correct me because you're the expert in this, but I just thought I'd do a little bit of reading about it. So mead is essentially fermented honey.
Yep.
It's a wine, but it's made of honey instead of grapes.
Honey, water, and yeast. Yeah.
I saw a couple, and I almost got them that had hops in them because you can add all kinds of other things into the process. But I decided to go with what I thought seemed to be like a pretty pure version.
Yeah.
That would be similar to what they drank there.
Right.
And
you know what's interesting? Just as a quick aside, every culture in the world that has had natural honey has made mead. Every single one.
It sounded like it. I read about it being it's big in Russia. Of course, Russia was founded by the Vikings.
Right.
So but the native Slavs probably
the Greeks drank it. The Greeks drank it. You know, Africa down in Africa, they found mead evidence.
Ethiopia. Ethiopia had a honey and that would be like kind of involved in the rest of the ancient world. Like Ethiopia is connected to that world more than what we think of. But in South Africa, the Xhosa people also made mead. So it's like it's pretty much worldwide. This is pretty much all over Eurasia. I don't know about
America didn't have honey. Didn't have bees.
I didn't actually know that. I knew they said that there wasn't any in the Americas, but were there no bees at all in the Americas?
Europeans brought bees to America. Isn't that odd?
That is super odd. That is super, super strange. Huh.
There are other pollinating insects, but
it's probably why we have hummingbirds. There are no hummingbirds in the old world. Right. So probably the fact that we didn't have bees. I can't believe that's weird. I can't believe I didn't know that. How interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really cool. So I wanted to have this answered if you can. What does fermentation mean?
What does fermentation mean?
Yeah. What does that mean?
So I think it denotes the process of the yeast eating sugar or ingesting sugar, and expelling as a result.
Ethanol.
Ethanol and carbon dioxide. Those are the two things that it expels. And so I always tell my kids that it pees alcohol and it farts CO2. And that's really what it's doing. But kids love it because they can visualize that. But it's eating sugar. And so imagine something like honey. You know, honey it's a very complex carbohydrate, right? But it's super sweet, lots of sugar. So they just love it, and that's why yours. How strong is yours?
Only 8%.
It's what?
I gather it's 8%.
Okay, and so mine's
I gather
7.
I gather it can range from like 3 or 4 all the way up to like 20.
Yeah, and so I've actually a friend and I made the 20 around the 20%, and it's super dry. It tastes almost like a brut champagne. I'm like super dry. champagne is really kind of what it tastes like.
I want to try making mead, by the way. That's like something, for some reason, I've never really gotten the bug about creating beer, but for some reason, this sounds more simple and more interesting to me, and I kind of want to try it.
Honey wine is fun, and you can do a lot with it, because we did a lot of different flavored meads. So you can do because you throw some other fruit in there, and it'll grab those and kind of flavor.
Yeah. Did you use hops?
No, we never used hops. We were trying to make it a little bit more traditional. So it was just the honey, water, and yeast is really all it was. It's good stuff though. And it's not too difficult to make. It does take a long time. I think the fermentation process on it, I think, is 6 or 8 weeks long. It takes a long time to make it.
So how do you initiate the process? It's just when there's yeast in the honey, it'll start fermenting?
What you probably,
or you have to do something else?
Well, you're going to mix it with water, because you got to water it down. The honey by itself is too thick. So you're going to mix it. And this is what the recipe is. It's probably going to be like, 1 part honey to 2 parts water or something like that. And to do it, you're gonna warm it up. Maybe not boil it, or maybe you'll boil it, and you'll mix it and you'll boil it so that it really mixes into the water and becomes very very viscous, right? And then once that's done, you can pitch the yeast, which means throw it in yourself, or which is what the Vikings did, is they would just put it in a vat, put it outside uncovered, and yeast would naturally land on it, because yeast is everywhere in the air. And they would just kind of believe, most cultures believe, that it kind of was divinely transformed into this stuff,
Right.
They just put it out there because they can't see it. Next thing you know, it's bubbling. A few weeks later, it'll get you drunk. So, and it has it has a lot of uses. Obviously, good for making you feel better, but also it preserves. It's got a shelf life, especially if water was scarce, or water was dirty or something like that, or if you kept water in barrels, like wooden barrels, water will actually spoil. It'll go bad, become tepid, and or not tepid. That's not the word. What's the word I'm looking for? Brackish. Stagnant and brackish.
Yeah. Okay.
Stagnant, not brackish either. But it'll become bad, but something like an alcohol will keep, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you're locked up, for weeks at a time during the winter, you want to have something that'll keep, that you can drink, that won't spoil. Also, if you
want that.
You do want that. Also, if you're on a ship, right, and you're out, your days at sea, you can't carry water, because again, it'll spoil.
I'm drinking mine room temperature, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I sort of looked it up to see what the recommendation was about whether you should chill it or not, and it said basically you can do whatever you like. And I figured it's not like Beowulf would have been able to refrigerate his mead, so I figured I'd drink it at room temperature, and
True. Although
I guess they could have just put it outside.
I was going to say, it's probably quite cold there. We didn't do it. Hey, by the way, skål. That's
right. We have to do these when whatever culture we're doing has an actual toast. We should definitely do it.
Absolutely.
But I forgot the Gaelic one we did already. But so we were talking about the other books of Michael Crichton, right? The last episode we did.
You're gonna bring up 13th Warrior or whatever that stupid
13th Warrior, yeah. So that's that's based on Beowulf to a large extent. Yeah. But it's also based on, and I might get this wrong, but I believe it's the Travels of Ibn Fadlan. There's two travelers with very similar names, and I might be mixing it up. But anyway, one of them is somebody who went to go visit the Vikings at that time period.
Yeah.
And there's a bit in there in the film, and I can't remember if it's in the book. I did actually read the book Eaters of the Dead. It was much better than the movie. But in the film, the Arab guy is refuses to drink the mead. And they're like, no, you can drink mead because the Quran says that you can't drink something that's made from, you can't drink beer, you can't drink wine. You can't drink something that's fermented from the grape or beer. And they're like, this is honey, so you can drink it. And he's like, oh, okay, and he gets drunk. So I actually looked that up, and most Muslims do not agree with that interpretation.
Yeah, I would imagine they.
Yeah,
just because they didn't know about it, I think the spirit of the law.
The spirit is the spirit is don't get hammered. It's bad for you.
Right.
So you're not. So any Muslims who are listening, that's my educated priestly opinion on Islam.
I think that's probably a good one.
Yeah.
That was an interesting book, interesting movie with Antonio Banderas as the Arab guy. But what's interesting about that? There was a lot of trade between, and this is what Crichton liked to do. He liked to find all these connections and bring them together. And so there was a lot of trade between the Middle East and the Vikings.
Sure.
It was completely, within the realm of possibility that they would have been visited by many people. As a matter of fact, there was a documentary about a famous Viking sword that was found like in a bog or something in maybe Iceland. And this sword was, they looked into it, and the sword is a pretty long sword, but it had the traditional Viking look, right? With the big, the big hilt and the big handle, the ball at the end, and the sword that really didn't taper. It just started off really wide and stuff. When they started looking into it, and it turned out this was like a Damascus steel made in Syria. It would have been made in Syria at 500 AD or something like that. And they talked about how much more powerful it would have been versus, the swords that other Vikings would have used at the time that they had kind of metal themselves, and how it
Damascus steel was you could shape it a lot easier, and it could be a lot lighter and more resilient than another blade.
It was folded, so they would hammer it out and then fold it and hammer it out and fold it and fold it.
But it was also it's only modern scholars in like the 1960s and 70s who found that what it is it's actually a different source of iron. The ingots that they used to make Damascus steel were like one specific place that has a certain amount of, I think it's selenium. And when there's selenium in the blade, it creates this Damascus steel thing. And it's just a better metal. And essentially like what they did they were good sword makers, they were some of the best sword makers, but the thing that really set it aside was the quality of the metal.
Yeah.
So easily something that a Viking would have wanted, and definitely would have made its way to Scandinavia during the Dark Ages. So, I mean, it would have been, I think there would have been. I
can't remember the name of the documentary. I'm sure it's on Netflix or one of the others. And go out and look it up and watch it sometime. It's a really good documentary about.
I've seen Viking artifacts with Arabic inscriptions on them.
Interesting.
Because they did talk to people from that part of the world, as we said, and so there's actually like Viking artifacts that have like some Arabic writing inscribed on them. So that's pretty interesting cross culture, because a lot of it is before the Vikings were Christian.
Yeah.
So they really didn't have any more bigotry towards the Muslims than they did towards other Europeans. So they were just conversing with them freely.
Right.
Which is a really interesting question about Beowulf, by the way, which is how Christian is this? Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because there's quite a few biblical references, like a lot. Like Grendel is descended from Cain, for instance. And there's like the author's always talking about the Lord this and the Lord that, bestowed upon me the right to win this battle and things like that. But there's not a lot of specific Christian talk. There's definitely a Judeo-Christian, Old Testament feel to some of this language, but I don't really pick up on anything particularly Christian. Yeah, which is pretty interesting, because definitely they ended up being Christian. Well, I thought that was
the question is okay. So it was either written before, because they didn't, like 500-600, I think even 700, Christianity wasn't introduced to them yet. So if it was written in that period, then that means that the Judeo-Christian references would have been added afterwards, in subsequent, revisions and stuff. Maybe, and if it was written afterwards, then they would have just kind of been put in as it was.
One thing to remember about this work, vis-a-vis Christianity, is that this work was written while it takes place in Scandinavia. It was written in England.
Yes,
probably somewhere in the middle of England, where the date of conversion to Christianity is much, much earlier than the date of conversion to Christianity in Scandinavia.
That's true.
By the 7th and 8th century, people are Christian in England. So
was it written in England? I mean, it
was written in Old English. It was written in Old English, and it would have been, the theory is that I think they said Mercia, so not far from London, kind of northwestish of London, I think.
I mean, I don't know. It's still a little bit speculative because they're saying that based on the fact that we only have one manuscript, and that was East Anglian and it was found in England. And it was written in Old English, but it's written in Old English, but it uses a lot of words and terminology that are not Old English. They're Norse, or they're Danish, or they're it has a good mixture of them.
So you've got that invasion, right? That's taking place in the 6th and 7th centuries. There's this invasion of Danish peoples and Norse peoples into England. And so the language becomes that they drop the British language, they drop the Gaelic tongues, before that.
Yeah.
So the vernacular, it's weird that it's not written in Latin. That's the weird thing, that somebody wrote something and didn't write it in Latin. Because people like the Venerable Bede, right? He's writing in 800 AD, maybe 750 AD. He writes in Latin. He doesn't write in Old English.
Well, that might be because this is written by commoners, for commoners.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it wasn't written by the court for the court.
Which is pretty cool when you think about it. So here's like my theory of why I think it takes place after Christianity is introduced. I think that this story is being told to Christian people who idealize and are fascinated with the pagan past, the way that we're fascinated with the Old West, right? Like, it's like this time when everything was much wilder and crazier and everybody was killing each other. And they're like, they want to hear about that time. They don't want to live in that time. They're done with those times. Those times are behind them, but they love hearing about it.
Right.
And I think I actually think, and this may be a bridge too far, but I think that the story of Grendel and the story of Grendel's mother are metaphors for the violence that took place in that pagan society. So Grendel sneaks into the Mead hall at night after everybody gets drunk and falls asleep and kills people. Right. And I think that represents the violence that used to exist in that society, where people would get drunk, slash each other's arms and legs off in the middle of a fight. And so this new Christian influenced king comes in to wipe out that monster. And then the mother, who comes back to avenge the death of Grendel, is like a metaphor for the constant cycle of violence. If somebody gets killed, and then they have to kill somebody, and then that person has to kill somebody. And it's two bad things about the ancient pagan society that are represented as monsters in this epic poem. That's my theory for it that I was coming up with while I was reading it. I don't know. That's not,
And then the dragon at the end, though?
I don't know. The dragon, maybe. I think the dragon is a pretty clear representation of greed, because it's all about the dragon sitting on a pile of gold, and somebody stealing the gold from the dragon sets off the dragon. The dragon attacks everybody. I don't know, maybe Beowulf sacrificing himself to fight that dragon is like a Jesus metaphor.
I was getting the Jesus metaphor pretty strongly there, but
okay.
I think all of that, I need entirely more Mead to really get into that.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I mean, it is hard to say. I mean, everything we say, it's all total guesswork. I think taking it at face value, what you've got a look or some insight into even if this is written in England, it was still written within a few hundred years of that thing going on, of whatever went on at the time.
Right.
So it would be akin to us writing a story now about the Pilgrims, or something like that. And
I was thinking like Billy the Kid, be talking about Billy the Kid,
something like that.
Not that long ago.
And we know enough about him where if we told the story now, we have good insight into what that life was like. Now we can add accolades and talk about Billy going to church or whatever we want to, or turn him into something else. But the fact is 1,000 years from now, somebody could read that and say, okay, this is what life was like for the most part for these people that lived there. This is what they were going through and stuff like that. And if that's true, then it was it's not chivalry, but I don't know, noble maybe time. And
I think it's not to be too pointed about it, but I think it's the opposite of chivalry. I think that's why people are fascinated with it, because it's this toxically masculine culture. It's this striving for glory and like violence at the drop of a hat. And it's like a lot of, it's actually a lot like a lot of things we're fascinated with in film today. Like people are fascinated with like mafia movies. People are fascinated with things about the Old West. People are interested in stories of war. The people are interested in times that were much bloodier because there's an attraction to it. Mm-hmm. And especially I think for young men, we're like, oh, it'd be kind of exciting to live. I've just been watching Fight Club, so maybe I'm influenced by that.
Maybe. It's but how different? I mean, if this was written between 700 and 900 AD, how much different was that time from this, though? I mean, it would have been just as bloody and barbaric. You know,
Christianity's a big change. It's a big change in the way people live their lives.
But you got you got the Crusades, where it's like, you know, it's barbaric for a quote unquote noble purpose, and even chivalry was a guise for you know, barbarism, but for a noble cause type of thing.
Right. Right. So I think the Crusades were an attempt to export toxic masculinity. Yeah, you know, you had these guys running around hacking each other's arms and legs off, and you're like, hey, why don't you go do that to the Muslims? Why don't you get out of here and go do that to the Muslims?
The Muslims did a good enough job then themselves as well. I mean, they put Spain to the spear and converted everybody at the point.
It was really, I mean, I think the Christians were responsible for a lot more forcible conversion in Spain, for instance. Then I think once the Christians took back a town in Spain, I think things were a lot harder for people. I mean, the Muslim strategy of conversion is usually long-term sort of suffocation of other people. You're not allowed to build that church. No, we're not going to murder you. But if you build that church, you have to pay us a gigantic tithe on it. And if you're allowed to live in our city, but you have to pay a tax just to exist. You know, things like that. It's like a long-term suffocation rather than like there's the initial military conquest, obviously. But I think it's more of a long-term thing. Like, look at Egypt. Egypt still today has like 15 or 20% Christians. It's a pretty large number of people. And they've just managed to sort of slowly, that number's been coming down ever since, 700 AD or whatever, when the Arabs conquered Egypt. I think that's more their strategy. I wouldn't have wanted to live in, I would not have wanted to, if I was Jewish, let's say, I'd rather live in Muslim Spain than Christian Spain. I think if you're a Jew in Christian
that's
Spain,
certainly true
in big trouble.
When Isabel
right, exactly.
France, yeah. But that aside, though, my point is that you're looking at only a few hundred years removed from when this happened.
Right.
I think I would argue that if this was written in England is probably just as bad, if not worse in many ways, than that time was vis-a-vis toxic, you know, masculinity and cutting each other's arms and legs off and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I would understand what you're saying about Christianity. It was still such a terrible time to be anybody but one of the guys at the top. You know?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The Monty Python thing is like, you know, that's the king. Why do you think he's a king? Well, he's the only one not covered in crap. You know. So you know, it's.
I've had this conversation.
Yeah, we did.
I've had this conversation before. I was talking to a guy on Twitter I follow, like, it's like a classical Rome guy that talks about it a lot, and he was talking about
nerd alert.
I was saying I don't really think the life of the average person in ancient Rome mattered whether you lived in the Republic days, the Empire, or after the fall of Rome. You were just as likely to be murdered by some army tromping through during the Empire as you were, you know. I don't really think it matters if you're a poor person who, you know, it's fascinating. We do these historical studies of the elites that are in charge of things, and that's fascinating stuff, but I don't know that it really matters to anybody's life.
The majority, you know, of the majority of people, they were not in that same group, and so for them, I think life is just as terrible. But what I was saying, what I meant by insight into their life, and it was a very chivalrous time, noble, maybe, I don't know. Whenever you address somebody, it was, oh, McArthur the Great, whose father hails from over here, who did all these wonderful things. We've heard so much about you, and you've done this, and you're such a friend and ally, blah, blah, blah. And so it's what Tolkien does whenever he describes any of his characters, you know.
Right.
It gives you this whole resume of
they all have a lineage
of how wonderful they are. Not only their lineage, but how big they are, how strong they are, and how they can take down 2 or 3 orcs with one blow or whatever it happens to be, right?
Right.
And so that's what they did every time they addressed somebody. That the orator, whoever is telling the tale, the bard would do this, right? Because it's his voice that you're hearing this through.
So we don't have a narrator who's in the tale, right? We don't know who it is. It's just like any other book that we would write today.
We assume it's kind of like Homer or Virgil or something like that. Who's
right?
It's the poet telling the tale.
Right.
I'm going to tell you a tale of this, of Beowulf, of the great Beowulf, and so it's this person telling us the tale. That's why it's an oral. I mean, it's just like I said, the Iliad or the Odyssey or the those are oral poems, right? They were never written down. They were never meant to be written. It was Homer.
Well, eventually, I think it's like this. Eventually, they're written down. The Aeneid, however, was definitely written first. Was not a native epic poem. It was definitely Virgil sat down and specifically wrote this.
Right.
Like one man created this, and that was Tolkien's contribution to the scholarship of Beowulf. Is his hypothesis was that this was one man that wrote this. That one guy sat down and wrote this to be all at once. And I don't know whether that's true or whether that's even a common belief today. I feel like probably like what you said, it's probably like Homer. Probably this goes back hundreds of years and has been slowly worked on and changed. And that's how we get what we have today is what was written down.
Tolkien was a linguist, wasn't he, by trade? Wasn't
philologist.
Philologist, okay.
Which is had I known when I was a kid that was a job, that's what I would have done with my life. I think philology sounds awesome.
I think that's what qualifies him to do this, because he was looking at the Old English and saying all of these words like sound are so much alike or whatever the structure is.
Yeah, there's a unity of composition.
Exactly.
That
so it couldn't
have
been multiple voices unless it was like so seamlessly done or something like that. But in any case, what were some other? I'm going to tell you real quick. Have you ever heard of Heidrun? Heidrun. Heidrun.
No, what's that?
Heidrun is a goat in Norse mythology who lives in Valhalla.
Okay.
And she gives an endless supply of mead from her udders. Fills a cauldron every day, big enough for everybody in Valhalla to drink from it. So you'll always have mead in Valhalla because of Heidrun.
There are items in Dungeons and Dragons like that, by the way.
That's a comforting
thing that just provides. Yeah, that would be great. That sounds good. I don't know if I'm going to Valhalla though. The odds of me dying in battle are pretty slim.
Although I think I would need to mix it up. I'd want like a dry mead one day, sweeter mead next. You're
not supposed to look a gift goat. You don't look a gift goat in the teats, by the way. You just take what you're going to get.
That's a good philosophy for life.
You don't complain. Yeah, exactly. You don't. So what is your personal background with this? Like, did you read it as part of your studies, or just like me, just stumbled across it in high school? Or
no, I read this in. So for my bachelor's degree, we took a class in Old English, a class in Middle English, and I think a class in. Actually, it would have been like 2 classes in Middle English because we had to take a Chaucer, and Chaucer was taught in Middle English, and so we had to take Middle English before we took Chaucer, and so Old English was an elective, and I took Old English.
That's cool. I wish I'd studied that. That's really neat.
And
what else do you read in that class? Beowulf, and then
just looking that up, and I can't remember for the life of me. I can find all the Middle English stuff, but
I gathered there apparent. So this Beowulf comes from one extant copy of something from like the 10th century, and apparently on that scroll or folio or whatever it is, there's a poem appended to it, which is also in Old English. So I think there are dribs and drabs of things that exist in Old English, but I think if I were to guess, I'd say Beowulf might make up 50% of what we have in Old English.
Yeah,
that's just a guess, but that's the only thing I ever hear anybody talk about in Old English.
Elric's Life of King Oswald, which I think I read.
Okay. That's pretty cool. That's cool stuff. That's a class I want to take sometime.
Yeah, those are fun classes. It's they do round you out, that's for sure.
Yeah, I like them.
But
I like.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I guess I was just kind of getting back to talking about the ethos of this, right? Which is like we talked about it. Like I like how there's just this assumption, and this is totally not Christian. Actually, you know what it is? It's a lot like what Nietzsche talks about with Christianity. It's like the assumption is that what you want to do in this world is get a lot of glory, right? Like the Viking belief is that you have to fight and die in a battle in order to go to Valhalla. You need lots of glory, and whatever treasures you build up follow you in the afterlife and stuff like that. That's very different than a Christian ethos. And it is just all through this.
Oh yeah.
So that makes me feel like the Christian stuff was just appended to it later.
Yeah.
Because the main storyline is just like Beowulf wants to go fight this monster, and that's what you do because you have to get glory, like. And the only way to be powerful is to do things that people respect as virtuous.
Although there is something to consider, that if you're looking at like 600-700 AD in Europe, especially in like Scandinavia, and if we consider that maybe they were going through a transition to Christianity, there's a lot of kind of Christianity. There's a myth in Christianity that a lot of the early leaders of the Catholic Church would use pagan holidays or pagan gods, or and use those holidays kind of in their, like Christmas is supposed to be a pagan holiday, and they just kind of appended, the birth of Christ onto that date because it was already a pagan holiday, making it easy. So you could make
same with Easter. We use the name of a Celtic goddess to refer to the day when Jesus came back.
Right, Easter.
They're not even hiding it there.
You could consider, because they don't talk about the afterlife. They talk about they talk about the afterlife in terms of people knowing who you were after you were dead, right? Singing songs about you and glorifying you and type of stuff like that. They didn't talk about him going on to Valhalla or anything. Anyway,
no, they don't talk about that. That's right. No, they don't mention it.
So
it's interesting.
It could be some type of transition period where, they still had the rituals of burying them with a bunch of treasure or setting them on fire and these types of things. But at the same time, the afterlife was all, Christianity based or Christian based.
By the way, if anything happens to me anytime soon, a ship burial,
Viking funeral.
Yes, that's what I'd like. That would be pretty cool.
So I have a 1962 tri-hull fiberglass boat.
Okay, there you go.
And
will that burn? Will that burn real good?
With enough lighter fluid, I think fiberglass will burn just fine.
Now you have to light it by shooting an arrow, by shooting a flaming arrow into it, right?
Maybe a flare. I don't know about a flaming arrow. Maybe a flare, though. I can see that. Flare gun that I quickly push you, push it out in the water.
Well, that's why you use the arrow, so you don't have to get close to the impending.
Well, a flare gun would be good for about 20 yards. So I think I can aim it directly at it.
Okay, I think you can make that shot. How big is the boat? It's a pretty good sized boat.
Oh no, it's small. It's a small little tri-hull piece of crap, fiberglass boat.
All right.
But I mean, I can't afford anything big. Come on, Dave. I'm a lowly professor. I don't have a lot of money.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. What I would really like is one of those large, like wooden, boats with like a dragon head on the prow.
Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all like that for our Viking burial? Thank you.
So one of the coolest archaeological artifacts I've ever seen in my entire life is actually the same trip we had a layover in Oslo on the way back.
Is it the Viking funeral ship?
Yes, it is so awesome. There's like a whole, hall. There's a museum hall in the middle of it. It's just dedicated to this Viking ship, and it's just what an unbelievable artifact. It's got this really intricately carved dragon head and stuff like that. Like very, very cool. Very
I think cool I saw that there was a National Geographic obviously did a whole spread on that, and I saw that issue. And
I had that one,
and stuff. It was so cool because they found it buried in the mud, so it was like perfectly preserved, right?
Yep.
And
yep, some kind of anoxic conditions, I think, happened to like preserve the boat. That's pretty cool. I like that. Tolkien did that. Tolkien had a Viking shipyard when Boromir gets killed. They shoot an arrow to shoot an arrow to light. Well, do they light it? Actually, I'm not remembering if they lit it.
I think they just set it adrift.
They definitely put him in a boat. Yeah, I think they put him down the falls.
Set it adrift with his horn asunder because it was cut in half. It was
split by the orc split it. That's right.
Split in half. Go ahead.
Have you ever tried to do kennings? No. Kennings, like when you do so like the Norse would say instead of the sea, they would call it the whale road. You take like two words and you put them together to form like a new coinage. I used to play a game with my kids in the car where we try to come up with kennings.
That was quite annoying. I will say that. Was,
you don't like that? You don't like kennings?
It was like the swim. What did he call it? It was like the swim trail or something stupid like that for the ocean. You know, he's like as a little. You know, they were gliding along
the Swan Road. I think
Swan Road or some crap.
Swan Road, the Whale Road, the Swan Road, the Ring Giver. The king is the ring giver.
Yeah.
That was not as weird. I was thinking we should come up with a kenning for a podcast. Okay. For like what a podcast is. So I was trying to think, what did I wrote something down here. Oh, you know what I found? I got the book out that I bought, which is the Seamus Heaney, by the way, translation, just if anybody cares. But it's a really nice edition, like hardback edition. And I got it out and I was looking at it. And I was like, wait, is that a sticker from Borders? And I was like, oh, I bought this book so long ago. It's got a Borders sticker on it. It always makes me happy when I see those. It brings back good
There was a place called Borders that sold books back in.
Yeah. Was there ever a Borders in Cruces?
No, we had a Walden Books, which is another.
Yeah, I used to go to Walden Books.
And then there was like okay, we had two. We had Walden Books and then B. Dalton booksellers. And B. Dalton was kind of like the highbrow version. Walden Books would sell things like Playboy, but B. Dalton sold like, really highbrow stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I used to go to both of those. We had one right across the street from my high school. We had a Walden Books.
And then we had a Border when we moved to Tucson. Of course, they had a Borders there. I like Borders quite a bit because they sold. I mean, it's kind of actually what Barnes and Noble is now. I mean, they sold music and books and all kinds.
Yeah, but they had a different selection of books at Borders. It was more brainy, like technical type stuff a lot of the time. Like I'd go and I'd look at the books there and I'd be like, wow, I didn't know about this, but like I'd learn from looking at the books there. And Barnes and Noble is kind of, I mean, that's probably what Barnes and Noble is still in business, frankly, is because it's more like designed to sell to people.
Well, they carry the bestsellers list. I mean, that's what
pretty much
Barnes and Noble does. But like you said, they're still in business.
They're still in business, exactly.
Nobody else is. What else? What was some? Oh, the dragon. So the dragon is basically Smaug, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. Definitely. There's
Tolkien's Smaug.
So when the Hobbit first sneaks into Smaug's lair, right? He goes in. I think he talks to him the first time he goes in.
He does.
Maybe no, he doesn't. The dragon's sleeping when he goes in the first time, and he steals a cup.
Yes.
And goes out. The dragon wakes up and senses that the cup is gone. And then goes on like a rampage, like flying around and like setting everything on fire, which is exactly what happens in the third
whole thing. Yeah, because he steals a cup.
A guy breaks in and steals a cup, and then the dragon goes around setting everything on fire. Right. It's the resolution's pretty different, but it's similar. So it's definitely. I mean, it's definitely Smaug. I 100% think so.
Yeah.
Except the dragon has no name.
Just a dragon.
It's just a dragon. It's called. So I have the translation on one side and the Old English on the other. So I was trying to figure out what word they were using for dragon. And they used like some version of Draka or Drake, but they also use worm. So there's a couple of different words that they're using for the dragon.
How different was it from Grendel's mother? Because Grendel's mother was described as dragon. In some versions, yeah. I think.
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that.
I think in mine they called her dragon or something like that once or twice.
Troll. They use troll to refer to Grendel, I think.
To Grendel?
I think to both of them. I think they do call them trolls. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. You know what, though? That might have been, I didn't see whether that was in the Old English. So I'm going to take that back. That might have been Seamus Heaney's translation of it. Yeah. I don't know. These things, when you get into the words, it's pretty hard to
it's kind of like translating the Bible, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of whatever the translator decided to put there.
Right. Like you really have to be careful to make a lot of assumptions about the book you're reading when you're like, oh, wait, did I even look to see what the original word was? I'm just going with the English version, which is kind of a foolhardy endeavor, to be honest. To do any serious commentary on one of these without knowing what is said in the original is pretty pretty silly to try and do it. I mean, you can't even, like, I have the New Testament in Greek. Well, no, that isn't the original language for the New Testament either. It was originally an Amharic or Aramaic. I guess that's pretty silly too. But anyway, we haven't done anything biblical, by the way. I think it'd be fun to do a book of the Bible for free choice sometime.
I think it might not be. I think it might be a bad idea. I think it might be a bad idea.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, let's do the Quran. Good time. Let's do that.
We could do that.
That'd be real fun. I think we are at that point.
Oh, yeah.
What was your biggest surprise?
Oh, my biggest surprise was the backstory of the scroll and how we almost lost Beowulf. How there was only one copy of it, and it was given to the crown, and the crown had it in a library, and the library burned, and it burned bad enough that it singed the scroll that was left, that had lasted for 700 years, and actually we've lost some of the lines of it from the fire.
Right.
Some guy, I think fairly recently, tried to recover some of what was burned and charred, kind of like what they're doing with the Herculaneum papyri. They're doing some reconstruction of what was burned and lost. Right. But that really shocked. I was like, wow, like that makes me actually appreciate what we have so much more. Like how tenuous a connection to that past we have. This is just about the only thing we have from that time, and we almost lost it.
Sure.
That makes me like it a lot more. Like I just really appreciate every word we can get. So that's my biggest surprise. That really struck me.
I guess mine would have to be what I sort of said earlier, was that this was a real time, and these were real people. Because I mean, throughout, it is a tale. There's no evidence of Beowulf ever existing. However, the king,
some of the other characters,
a lot of the other characters were real people. And again, knowing that even if it was written at the latest 900 AD, you're 400 years removed, what it really means is that all that stuff in Tolkien, all that glorifying people and all the stuff that they, the rich language that they use and so forth, that was a real time. The courtly presence of Vikings, I guess that would be a good way to put it. The court of the Vikings really existed. It's hard to think of them as something real, right? Because they're such a caricature. You know what I mean? Between TV shows and whatever else, it's we trivialize them, we create these myths out of them, but you don't think about this was real at one time. People, did this.
Sure.
And so this is just a good reminder that this is a real time in history, that people really did live like that stuff. And so I guess just thinking about that, because I never really thought about that before. I just read it kind of as a story, which is actually funny. That's what Tolkien wants us to do, is read it as a story. His predecessors, and he sort of admonished them for this, wanted people to read it historically. Like, this is a historical text. And he's like, no, this is an entertaining text. Anyway, so I'm going the opposite way. After almost 100 years of reading it as an entertaining text, I'm like looking at it. Oh, this is historical too. So I guess the best thing to do is look at it both ways.
I mean, it's much like the Bible. Right. It's a story, and it's got a point that the people are trying to make by telling the story. But just by virtue of being a snapshot of this ancient civilization, it's a historical document.
Absolutely.
You can definitely get information about what this world was like. You want to take it with a great big grain of salt and be careful about what you read. Like we can't even determine whether this is a Christian society or not. We think maybe it is.
Yeah, there's a lot we don't know about. Absolutely,
there's a lot we don't know. But this is all we know. It's essentially like one photograph on the wall of your great grandparents, and you're trying to figure out what their lives were like from looking at this. But at least you have that picture. It's not nothing.
Yeah,
so,
something. Yeah,
something. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's it's definitely a valuable document, like a pretty much like an extremely valuable document. Yeah. Oh, I wanted to say so a Viking ship burial, fine. You burn a ship. That's wasteful. You could give that ship to somebody else.
Right.
But the worst thing that ancient people did, and this is not just the Vikings, this is all over the world, Egypt, Mesoamerica, all over the place, is when one of these guys dies, one of these elite guys dies, they bury themselves with a ton of treasure. What a gigantic waste. You know, like when Beowulf dies and he tells his people, oh, I'm dead. Put all this dragon gold I just got in the course of dying, bury that under the ground. Oh, and by the way, the Danes are coming to kill you because they hate you. And they're like, well, maybe we should take some of that dragon gold and buy some swords and get some mercenaries. No, bury it me with it.
Yeah. Put me in there and then put dirt over it. Yeah.
That's I think that way that elites once behaved in places like Egypt and stuff like that is like where people have the myth of what rich people are like today. You know, they're like, oh, this rich guy that's got a yacht, you know, because we come from thousands of years of this tradition of these elites, like just burning all their grave goods with them when they die. But it's like the yacht it's not like that. You buy the yacht from a company. There's a bunch of workers that built the yacht. Right. You put gas in your yacht. You go travel somewhere with your yacht. You hire a staff for your yacht. It's not just a wasted. It's not a wasted economic resource.
It's not like you build your own rocket to blast yourself in outer space or something. I mean, who does that?
As a New Mexican, how many people did that employ in our state?
Right.
You know, those are some of the best jobs in our entire state. Are at those two facilities.
Virgin Galactic, that's true.
At Virgin Galactic, yeah. So I mean, anyway, but I got off into a diatribe there. But anyway, it's just really unbelievable how elites used to treat wealth, and it's real. It's not just a story from Beowulf. I mean, the stuff that was in King Tut's tomb could have fed thousands of people if it had just been sold or used.
Yeah, but again, I think it goes back. I think it goes back to what was the perception of, what is a life worth?
Right.
The commoner is worth nothing, absolutely nothing. I mean, they really weren't. Even in feudal, Europe, they were only, the peasants were there to farm for me. That was it.
Right.
They're like animals. I mean, they're like a mule or something. I mean,
it's hard to build a pyramid. Without a couple of peasants to help you do it.
Right. But the thing is, like, that's what they're there for. Like that is what they are there for. I think we talked about this before with Marcus Aurelius. Like, your lot in life, you just have to accept it. Well, which is great to say if you're the emperor. This is my lot in life. I'll just accept it. But what if you're the guy at the bottom of the totem pole? And you're stuck, cleaning the crap off of the Marcus Aurelius's shoes every night. It's not so much but the philosophy is, well, that's your lot in life, so you might as well accept it.
That's true. It's a good philosophy to put forward for all the peasants to follow.
Right. But the thing is,
that was the way Nietzsche viewed Christianity.
Yeah.
As being like a trick to give people the slave morality, so that they would just sit back.
Drug for the masses, right?
No, that's Marx. Opium for the masses is Marx. Yeah, but this is like the idea that that you have a philosophy that's like suffer in silence and like wait for all your rewards in the afterlife and stuff like that. Is how he viewed it. He thought you should behave like Beowulf and like strive for glory and be an Ubermensch. So anyway, we're getting towards the end. So your big surprise, you already told me, was the historical value of this. It's not just the story. Okay, so I think we're at the time where we have to ask whether we're toasting this classic, and it's up to you.
It is up to me. I have a lot of power right now.
That's right. You're drunk with your own power.
I am a middle-aged guy with 2 kids, wife. I typically don't have this kind of power. I don't wield this kind of.
Well, just remember that you have to wield that power in a way that brings glory to your name.
Right.
And that's what really matters.
With great power comes. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. You said it. Oh, all right. You know what? I will. I think this is absolutely classic that I'll toast.
Okay. All right.
I mean, this is Beowulf. I mean, this is the founder of the feast when it comes to the kind of fantasy literature that I grew up on. That countless people love. That Tolkien's stories and everybody that came after Tolkien. If it weren't for this, we wouldn't have Conan the Barbarian. We wouldn't have so much. Absolutely, I'll toast this classic, and I think it does serve as a piece of classic literature. It is very, very important to show, give us insight into a life.
Bygone time.
Yeah, a life and time that we could never have even imagined. So yeah, I will toast it.
All right. I gotta come up with a more marginal case next time, because there hasn't been much drama in the last couple. I'm like, do you like Jurassic Park? You're like, yeah, I like Jurassic Park. Like, is Beowulf a classic? Yeah, Beowulf's a classic.
Yeah.
I gotta come up with something upon which discerning minds could differ next time. So
yeah, we'll have to. Well, I have the next movie, right?
Oh, right. I don't even know what it is yet. Are we gonna announce it now? But
so I'm announce it now.
Or do you want me to just tell me later? I'll put it in the outro. Either way, if you have it picked, go ahead.
No. I'm thinking this will be a fun one. I'm thinking of a Western. I'm thinking of the one that made Clint Eastwood into somebody. And the name of the movie, shot in Italy.
Okay, so this is Fistful of Dollars?
Yeah,
Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Oh,
okay.
All right.
So, circa 1962, 1963, something like that. Classic. So I'll have to figure out what to drink other than old red eye or something stupid. Maybe we'll drink some. No.
Anything Western we got to drink. No? Okay.
Rot gut. No. Actually, I'm thinking maybe something Italian, which would go.
Okay. That could be. An Italian whiskey would be a good.
That would be interesting. So that will be for next week. That's what we will be discussing, and I think that's controversial enough that it might not get a toast. So we'll see.
I really do like Clint Eastwood. I just watched The Outlaw Josie Wales like last week. I hadn't seen that one. So I mean, I don't remember. I think I saw Fistful of Dollars. I don't think I've actually watched Good, the Bad, and the Ugly recently. Not since I was a kid or something. So, but I'm probably gonna like it. But I'll try to reserve judgment.
We'll see. Actually, coming off the heels of Josie Wales, that is a good transition because he made The Outlaw Josie Wales as a response to making Good, Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars, and A Few Dollars More. And we can get into all that, but that's a really good transition. So I'm glad you watched that. So, well, very cool, man. This is fun as always. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Toasting the Classics.
Thanks for joining us. Peace out.
That's it for episode 17 of Toasting the Classics. For those playing along at home, get some whiskey, Italian if possible, for next week where we'll be discussing the 1966 Clint Eastwood film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. If you'd like to get in touch, please email us at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, comments, complaints, anagogical interpretations of Beowulf's third act, whatever. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.